Life has the name for quote-unquote human life, Heidegger explicates. There's a stunning move in this when you think it through. Life has the name for human life. So how does life ordinarily sound to us if you just think about it? I mean, think of Patricius, St. Patrick, stumbling through the greens of Ireland, all kinds of small cunning creatures following him in droves. Think of fructification in general, of orchards, of groves of apples and pears and persimmons and so on. I mean, life as such, animal life, the life of a baboon, discovering something strange and displaying curiosity in the forest, the rapid, intelligent movements of a small bird, whatever you like. But here he says, life as the name for quote-unquote human life. So the human being is, Nietzsche is in this ground of such freedom. He's kicked himself loose of the earth and all its forces, as it were, and suddenly he can pluck out such a basic word as life, and now life means human life. This thing that all things must serve. So once we get through the first threefold division in the initial section 1 of Nietzsche's second essay in Thoughts Out of Season, then only then do we start to make this choice of our means to serve life, of this the monumental, the antiquitarian, or however it should be called, and the critical history as our means. So as we've seen, Nietzsche very largely favors the critical history as the means. So this is not reassuring for people that are concerned with politics, I suppose, political people in general, and I suppose for people who have a fellow feeling for the troubles that people are having these days in general, even if you aren't particularly political minded, you should remember that a philosopher is not just a thinker. A philosopher has to have a good heart also, otherwise it will be probably not too useful. Yes, Heidegger doesn't offer much reassurance here in that he regards this tendency of Nietzsche, which seems to be, one can say, with many transformations, many modifications, what we see in this embryonic form in this essay becomes the Übermensch, or the Superman, and therefore the main method of the Superman is in some way transformed, grown, changed form of this critical history. And Heidegger says here, he calls this the quote-unquote nihilism. This is a depreciatory designation. It's not that he's putting it in scare quotes to question what the nihilism means. He would have just said the nihilism, but for this figure that's leaning on the critical history, he regards this, which he glosses or explicates, in some way repeating Nietzsche, almost paraphrasing. These are the ones that use critical history in the service of life, which is, we just seen, is now a name for human life, and it covers everything that exists, the whole of being. So, one are dangerous, comma, because they uproot, apparently, in parentheses, bringing danger, end parentheses, and being irreverent. Of course, we have literally seen tons of such behavior in just the last few weeks. Two, he becomes more deeper into the same sentiment. Two, endangered, in parentheses, they are themselves pulled into the groundless. Double parentheses, standing in danger, being pushed into the brink. Endangered, they are themselves pulled into the groundless, standing in danger, being pushed into the brink. So, again, I'll mention that I don't think the political actors that we see now meet the criteria, the first criterion, of the criterion of full awareness of taking a choice about the issue. Rather, they are fueled by you say the general sense of the connection between liberalism as such and science, in the sense that it connects to the view that it connects to a general sense of optimism, because there's constantly being produced things by the empirical science, the inventive sciences, that even if on the large people don't subscribe to the kind of view that Pinker subscribes to, they nonetheless act as though they subscribe to it, because, of course, Pinker pushes certain explicit rationalistic ideological points that people may largely disagree with. But the general way people are acting is according to the view that the sciences will produce things that will help us to be more, that the world will improve as long as we just sort of keep along with it. And human nature is basically good because it can be, we can find clever ways to tame the human animal, as Sloterdijk or Groys will tell you that we failed to do up till now, but yet people go on acting as though there's constant improvements in our understanding of the human being, which are, and that we'll get there. So all this in what we have here, Heidegger then somewhat stunning rebuke almost, but it's not really a rebuke, is telling us that here Nietzsche is failing to understand the problem with our problem with the relation to being, and he makes some detailed comments about how Nietzsche is failing to see this ambiguity between being as a whole and human life. He's equating Nietzsche, according to Heidegger, Nietzsche equates being as a whole is equal to human life, human understanding and essence grounded in this understanding. A relation between beings as a whole and the human beings is hidden in this ambiguity. Nietzsche doesn't see, so again, Nietzsche doesn't see Dasein. What does that mean for the, but on the other hand, Heidegger, I believe, says quote-unquote nihilism precisely because it's not the Superman who is exercising nihilism just because he's doing critical history, serving life. The ability to bring forth this whole picture where human life replaces life, where everything is in the service of it in this calculative way, that's where the real nihilism starts to be seen to some extent. To the extent that we can tear ourselves apart and reconstitute ourselves as a Nietzsche and see how he's therefore really moving into this sense that everything that's intelligible can be shifted like that. The meaning of life switched off for the human life, switched off for the whole of being, and that it can really be thought into history as it's moving forward. This certainly seems to go beyond Nietzsche's unpretentious truths that he claims to like, but it comes, of course, through a lot of thinking about rationalistic metaphysics. That's the other last thing I wanted to mention is there's some difficulty, I think, with this term. It's been troubling my conscience for a while. This term, the British empiricism, just being thrown sort of in. It's convenient, but I think it sort of just poses the old continental rationalism against the British empiricism. It remembers this kind of conflict, and then the people that are sort of like continental philosophers or whatnot, like, because I had noticed subsequent to hearing Pravis Iman use the term, that Zizek often uses the term. I probably heard him use it before, but didn't mark it. I think I'm going to be more conscious about the use of that term and what it's signaling and whether it is sufficient as we go forward.